There is another thing that the White House has its eyes on: the investigation into the origins of the Wuhan virus. The World Health Organization investigators stepped out of quarantine today, and as they began their investigation, the Biden White House had a message for China. Our next report tells you more.
These investigators had to wait for months for Beijing's nod. Now they can finally begin the long-delayed investigation into the origins of a virus that has now killed more than 2 million people worldwide.
After the World Health Organization team of experts arrived in China, in accordance with international standards, they underwent a 14-day quarantine which ended today. Next, with the observance to China's pandemic prevention measures, they will continue to jointly exchange views over the investigation into the origins of the coronavirus, which will include meetings, interviews, inspections, and other activities.
The world has its eyes on this WHO team. 13 investigators have been tasked with figuring out the origins of the Wuhan virus. After a 2-week quarantine, they can now finally step into Wuhan, a city better known as the original epicenter of the pandemic. For months, China kept delaying this much-needed probe. Now, Beijing is trying to set the narrative around it. Well before the WHO team could begin its work, China began aggressively pushing back the blame for the pandemic. Chinese officials have been pushing unfounded theories, including a conspiracy about a US military germ lab. Earlier this month, the Chinese diplomat had suggested that the Fort Detrick lab in Maryland could be the source for the Wuhan virus. An absurd and long-debunked claim. The Biden White House did not hesitate in calling out Beijing.
Obviously, the misinformation, of course, that we've seen also come out of some sources in China is of great concern to us. It's imperative that we get to the bottom of the early days of the pandemic in China, and we've been supportive of an international investigation that we feel should be robust and clear.
Already, questions are being raised over the credibility of the WHO investigation. China has not shared the itinerary for the team in Wuhan, and the investigators will rely on the evidence given by the Chinese officials, instead of trying to gather any facts of their own. The Biden administration has decided to conduct a probe of its own. Team Biden is devoting significant resources to understand how the pandemic began. The American intelligence community is doing its own information gathering. The American government wants to work with allies to evaluate the credibility of the international investigation. The Biden administration declared it will not take the WHO report for granted. Perhaps other world leaders should promise to do the same. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.